Hello everyone, welcome inside our NEC Front Row Studios. I'm Craig D'Amico, subbing in for Ralph Ventry, and this is NEC Women's Basketball on the Run. Happy NEC New Year. While thousands usually wait New Year's Eve for the ball to drop in Times Square, here in the NEC we do things a little bit differently. We wait for the ball to tip up, and this past weekend it did. The first of 10 straight conference weekends of NEC play around women's basketball. Let's take a look where they stand. So 2 games in, 4 teams managed to escape the first weekend of conference play unblemished. St. Francis Brooklyn, Robert Morris, and Sacred Heart all stand a perfect 2-0. Robert Morris, the 2019 NEC preseason favorite and the league's last remaining unbeaten last year, winning their first 9 games, won their NEC opener on Saturday against Mount St. Mary's, winning Game 1 14 times in the last 15 years. They followed that up with a dominant defensive performance Monday night against FDU, more on that in a little bit, to start 2-0 for the second straight season. The reigning champion, St. Francis Red Flash, claimed home wins over Mount St. Mary's and FDU to start 2-0 for a second straight season. The Sacred Heart Pioneers won a pair of home games at the Pitt Center against Central Connecticut State and LIU to go to 2-0 for the first time since 2016-2017. And St. Francis Brooklyn were the only one out of the 4 unbeatens to have to go on the road and win this weekend. They won their opener at home against Wagner before heading up to the Ocean State on Monday night, where they beat the Bulldogs by 5. The Terriers start 2-0 for the first time since 2013-2014. And now she gets buckets, and in this case, boards as well. Sydney Holloway averaged 19.5 points and 17 rebounds during the league's opening weekend to help lead Bryant to a split of their 2 games played. After a 9th double-double on Saturday against LIU, she recorded her second 2020 game of the season, 20 points, 20 rebounds against the Terriers. Coach Burke mentioned this year that Sid has picked up right where she left off a year ago, putting up dramatic numbers in 2018-19. See, if you're an opponent and you let Sid get the ball 6 feet from the hoop, good luck with that. She fights her way through double teams, triple teams, and continues to be an anchor for Coach Burke and the Bulldogs. Time now for our Twitter timeout, as I selfishly promote my own Twitter account at CraigCD13. Back on Monday, I said, great night in Rhode Island for NEC women's basketball on ESPN3. Thank you to Mama Sim for the pizza and brownies. They were delicious. And check out the NEC Overtime blog on Wednesday for the first weekend recap and a full feature on SFU's Jess Kovac. Okay, 2 things with that. First, Linda Simoneau from Rhode Island, the Terrier head coach, and on Monday, she brought her team to the Ocean State to take on the Bulldogs at the Chase Center. Her family was there, her mom was at the game, and she just so happened to bring myself and Pam Roker some brownies and pizza. Not customary to bring the announcers food, but very much appreciated. So thank you to Coach Sim and her mom. And of course, check out the NEC Overtime blog, a great feature this week on the NEC's all-time leading scorer, Jess Kovac, as we detail her journey to the top of the NEC record books. Up next, I can't really tell you about diversifying a portfolio, but I can tell you whose stock is rising in the NEC. And that's Robert Morris, sophomore. Ire Ozzy Mamadou, the Colonial, averaged just 3.6 minutes per game last year as a freshman, only scored 16 points the entire season. But this year, she averages 17 minutes a game, splitting time in the post with NECWBB. But she makes the most of those minutes. She put up a career-high 17 points against the Mount and had a near double-double, 10 points, 9 rebounds on Monday against FDU. She has a 35.1% usage rate in the 2 games last weekend. Usage rate measures the percentage of true outcomes while you're on the court: free throw attempt, field goal attempt, or a turnover. She collected 35% of those things while she was on the court in those limited minutes of action. Also, she collected 25% of rebounds while she was on the floor, the #1 rebound rate in the league. So again, doesn't play much, splits time in the position, but when she's on the floor, she's a force, and her stock is rising way up. Ire Ozzy Mamadou from the Colonials. Up next, stats amazing. Monday night, Robert Morris flexed their defensive muscles. The Colonials, they have the #1 scoring defense each of the last 3 seasons in the NEC, and they find themselves currently in the top spot again, thanks to first quarters like the one they had against FDU on Monday. The Colonials collected 5 steals, 9 turnovers against the team that had the fewest turnovers coming in. They limited the Knights to 1 for 10 shooting from the field and allowed only 2 points in the first 10 minutes. The 2 points allowed in the first quarter, the second fewest allowed in a quarter in program history. They allowed 1 point in a quarter to the Terriers a year ago. The Robert Morris Colonials, they turn over teams at a 25% rate, which is a top 10 stat in the country. They collect turnovers like my stomach collected Christmas cookies over the holiday break. The Colonials and their defense, stats amazing. Well, last weekend was great, but now it's time to turn the page and look ahead to week 2. And the big game that stands out, St. Francis Brooklyn against Robert Morris. 2 of those 4 remaining unbeatens that we mentioned earlier. And in this case, it's the #1 offense scoring of St. Francis Brooklyn, 77 points per game, against the #1 scoring defense of Robert Morris that we mentioned earlier, only allowing 59 points per game. The Colonials come to town. Last year when they visited Brooklyn, they suffered their only NEC loss outside the state of Pennsylvania when the Terriers pulled off the upset. Now, following that game, it doesn't get any easier for St. Francis Brooklyn because they're going to welcome in the St. Francis Red Flash, the reigning champions, on Monday night. A big test this weekend for the Terriers as they battle some of the NEC heavyweights. And don't forget, you can catch all NEC games this weekend on NEC Front Row. That'll do it for this week. I'm Craig D'Amico, and this has been NEC Women's Basketball on the Run.